Hello and welcome to DDOCast episode 529, recorded live on Sunday, August 26th. I'm your host, Patrick. With me this week, we have returning to the show, Arkat. Welcome back, sir.
Good afternoon or morning to you.
Morning still here. But welcome back. And welcome back to DDOCast. I've been on vacation the last couple of weeks, so we haven't been able to do a show. And for those of you wondering why I didn't, in the past I've been out and I've gotten Jerry or the Damsels to host the show. I couldn't do that this week, or I could have, but I wouldn't have been around to produce the show and put it out, so it was kind of a moot point. So we've been gone for a couple of weeks, but we're back, and with a lovely screenshot.
That's a very cool one.
Yeah, that's pretty slick. This is Sayaka Greenleaf summoning a bird of prey beneath an angry sky in the 297th DDO screenshot of the week. Thanks, Clubberlang, for sending in that screenshot. I think that might be in Chronoscope, but I'm not positive.
Oh, I didn't even think of Chronoscope. Yeah, that would make sense. It kind of looked like how there was like a gate open, way back when the tent. The marketplace tent got destroyed, but that would make much more sense that it was,
Where did you think
Chronoscope. Well, I guess initially when I first saw it, I thought, that might be it from Night Falls on Stormreach, but I didn't recall the sky being that, that messed up when the torch, the harbor torch went out. So the beacon, right? So no, I think you're right. I think that is Chronoscope.
In any case, very nice screenshot. We like to talk about Dungeons & Dragons online nearly every weekend. You can catch us through Twitch, YouTube, the DDO forums, iTunes, or from our website at DDOCast.com. DDOCast is hosted by CyberEars, the awesome podcast hosting network, and shows are usually available within a few days of recording. The next show will probably be this next weekend, probably Saturday, but still kind of figuring that out. You can stay updated by following us on our social media pages or our website, DDOCast.com, with our calendar. The next show will be our review of Update 39. It's White Plume Mountain and the other tales that were with that. This week, after the news section, we have an Ask the Devs. One of the things I got to do while I was out is I actually went to Sandy Stone Games, so was with Severlin and Torc and interviewed them about White Plume Mountain and a few other things, some of the stuff they dropped at Gen Con and some other stuff. So that'll be on the back half of this show. However, for now, let's talk about game news, because there's a little bit of game. Thankfully, they didn't drop like 5 updates while I was gone, so there's not a ton.
That would have been a lot to talk about.
Yeah, but there is some stuff to talk about that's going to be some big changes. So on Lamannia, they had update 39.2, so that would be the next patch, essentially. And we're going to just go through some of this. There's some fun stuff here and some really fun stuff that we're going to camp on. But start off some. First, Colors of the Queen can no longer affect allies when using Flame of the Favored.
Okay.
That's good.
I guess.
It seems Colors of the Queen and the Prism, right, have always kind of been this thorn in their side of, we introduced this new thing that affects players, and it triggers this on the players. So it's just kind of fun to watch how that happens. But here we go. So here's some of the... so for all of the people that have occasionally said, hey, every time I do an Ask the Devs, someone always puts in, when are we getting cosmetics for wolf and bear forms? Update 39 Patch 2 is your answer. There are 6 new items that have been added to the Mysterious Remnants vendor called Warpaint. These items go into the cosmetic headgear slot and apply patterns in various colors to druids in wolf, winter wolf, bear, and dire bear forms.
Who cares?
Some people like cosmetics, man.
Well, yeah, I like cosmetics too, but for crying out loud, people wanted, their entire bear to be changed colors. Like instead of that, that really generic brown color, maybe make it black or white, something that was different. I imagine some people would want a pink bear or a purple bear, and of course you got a problem with lore with that, but I mean, at least you could have done is make white and black and, maybe a darker brown, something like that.
Did you actually look at
that
the colors?
Nice.
I didn't look at I haven't seen the
patterns.
they're
They're not real. The patterns are small they kind of remind me of like a dragon mark would on your face, or maybe kind of like a less complicated version of the ASMR patterns on their faces. So
sure. I know that
big
there
deal.
were some lore and licensing reasons why they couldn't go crazy.
Sure.
Although when we were at lunch, I went to the lunch with some of the devs, and we were kind of just joking around, like, oh, we should have had like hot rod flames, and I was like, it's probably a good thing Steel Star didn't work on this, because it would have had a cosmetic where it would have like 2 rune arms mounted.
Yeah, it looked like a battle mech or something.
Yeah, right. So, but anyways, they have these. We also suggested a mohawk, like a bear, like right down the back of the ridge or something.
That would have been cool.
Actually, I guess technically it is a dire, but like a dire wolf. There's other things they could probably do full like cosmetic ones that were different, kind of stylized wolves that weren't like painted kind of thing.
Sure,
too.
sure.
But hey, first steps, right? So this is a big deal. There's a lot of places we can go from here. Right. So they have created the tech to do it. That's kind of the important thing to take away from this. So if you don't like them, you can now suggest more easily, and instead of it just being, hey, we need this, it's, we have this, can we have this with it? Right?
Right.
So you can kind of, yeah.
Or that instead.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Let's see. A couple levels of the new Crystal Cult weapons will get an increase in their damage dice. The revamp, and that's just to match with the current progression in the game. Fearless Carnival weapons now have a minimum level, because they revamped them and made them better. Wave's freeze effect now applies more reliably and is now properly made of bone. That's kind of fun. Actually, going back to the Fearless Carnival, but I don't know. I kind of wish there were some more weapons that didn't have minimum levels, right? A little better
nice.
twinkier. So
yeah, for sure. Make those low levels a little bit less painful.
Yeah. Let's see. Hand wraps that previously held sentient gems can now be converted into collars. It used to be that if you put a sentient gem on a hand wrap, you could never then convert it into a collar.
Even if you even if you remove the sentience, yeah.
Right. They just flagged it and said you can't do it anymore. However, it is still intended that sentient jewels cannot be slotted into collars, or you can also not convert hand ramps that currently hold a sentient gem into a collar.
Yeah. That's good.
Yes. It would be kind of fun, but I understand why they're not doing that.
Sure.
Let's see. Perhaps for some people, this will be the most fun release note. The Bastard Sword's Spinal Tap now goes to D11.
D11,
yes.
That's right.
It took them a little while, but there you go.
That was suggested years ago.
Yeah, right. It's just one extra day. It was D10, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was D10, like Bastard Sword damage.
Yeah.
But
If you're going to do Spinal Tap, Bastard Sword, why is it not D11 in the first place?
Why did it start with D11? Yeah, exactly.
You're going to do an Easter egg. Do it right, guys. It is now possible to get mythic versions of several items and return to White Plume Mountain. So apparently that was broken. We're going to come back to that one. They fixed several undead to no longer heal improperly.
Good.
Believe that is healing will damage them instead of...
Yes.
Yep.
Instead of actually healing them. Yeah, that's right.
Oops.
Yeah.
The Codex in the Shroud. Fortis will no longer occasionally spawn the Sigil of Life ability randomly, which could sometimes cause client performance issues if triggered too frequently. So I read that to be that he has a cooldown on it now, as opposed to being able to shoot it out all the time.
Spam it, yeah. Okay.
The number of cultists in Misery's Peak has been reduced. They trimmed some stuff in Evening Star. When was the last time you ran Misery's Peak?
It's been a while, but I have some very, very distinct and painful memories of just going through that. Yeah.
I knew people that wouldn't refuse to run it until level 4 when they could get haste. You can get haste spots earlier now, but they wouldn't run it without haste.
Yeah.
For good reason. Let's see. Reaper difficulty. Here's a fun one. Damage and healing values that now have a minimum value of 1 due to Reaper scaling. So whatever is going to heal you will at least heal you for 1, which is, I think, great.
Okay. So 1 point of healing as opposed to
0.
0.
Right.
Okay. I wasn't sure what that whole terminology of of what that meant. Whether that was like from like maybe 10%, the 1 = 10% or whatever. But okay, so it's 1 point of healing. Okay.
And I kind of knew why they didn't do it. This is not something I talked to them about. They have not said this, but I was pretty sure that the reason why they did that originally, where it could scale down to 0, is in the past they've been really reluctant about things that give you 1 point of healing. Specifically, the Ring of Regeneration, many years ago, was a big point of this, because what they found was people would basically wait until that thing would fill them up with hit points.
Right.
Now, granted, this was back in the day when 200 hit points was a ton of hit points. So I think we're pretty safely in that space, and the people that are probably running Reaper are not going to wait for something that's giving them 1 hit point every couple of seconds to.
Don't got time for that.
Yeah, right. Especially if you've got if you're one of these new super tanks that are running around with 6,000 hit points.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I really like this because it opens up a lot of stuff. One of the things I think, for me at least, it's gonna find a lot more use for is the tasty hams. And the reason I say that is because essentially using a tasty ham essentially gives you automatic stabilization. Because if you go in cap, it'll give you that 1 point. So
I didn't know you could use that while you were incapacitated.
no, you can't. But if you have it running.
Right
now,
right.
if you use the tasty ham, it's not going to give you any healing because it's so low a value.
Right.
But if the minimum value is 1, which is essentially what it is anyways,
right,
then
if you go down, you will automatically
automatically stabilize because you'll get a heal.
Yep. Right.
So I don't expect them to make or break things for me very often, but it's an excuse to use ham.
Cargon will be happy.
Yeah, right. There you go. Okay. The other thing, and this is the big one. There's 2 more things that we need to talk about. That one that was in the Lamannia build, and one that wasn't. The big one was in the Lamannia build. Melee survivability changes. So this. Let me back up. They're introducing some changes to help melee builds survive in epic and more difficult content. This is the first step to a longer process to add features that will generally be available to anyone, with changes that target specific classes or builds, such as barbarian changes. And you'll hear more about this directly from the devs in the interview later, but kind of a brief summary is they do want to introduce specific changes to specific classes and build types, but there's a recognition and understanding that one of the best things about DDO is it's more about your build than your class. So they don't want to introduce, as a poor example, they don't want to introduce a bunch of survivability changes that give fighters and monks and your traditional melee class builds more defenses that leave out, say, someone who's playing an Eldritch Knight, right? That then won't get them. There's also the with Ranger, there's a problem because if you just give Rangers a bunch of defense, well, the ranged Rangers will get a bunch of defense, and that's not
right.
The issue that they're trying to kind of address here is melee as an archetype, not classes as an archetype. So
right.
That's kind of the theory behind this, and they'll go into this and probably explain a little bit better in the interview that'll be after the show. Let's jump ahead and talk about the barbarian changes, which I think we might have already talked about. But barbarian damage reduction no longer gives classic damage reduction, which was ridiculous.
Yeah.
At level 2,
3 slash.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think I got up to 9 slash maybe.
You could.
No, it would have been 7 or 8. I don't know. You could get maybe 10, right? 10 damage reduction, which when things are hitting you for 1,000 points of damage is laughably hilarious. You may have seen a tweet that I posted put on Twitter when we ran Tempest Spine on Reaper 10 and got to the end boss, and I got hit for 36,000 points of damage. Stop. 6 of it was reduced by my damage reduction, right? This was the plight of barbarians. This was not my barbarian, by the way. Anyways, So you can see why this form of damage reduction is kind of ridiculous. So what they're doing is they're changing it to percent. So you start with 3% damage reduction to everything except for Bane. And this is calculated before PRR and MRR, so that's fantastic. A Barbarian at level 20 will have a net of 9%, because you'll get increases along the way. There is another 4% available in the Barbarian Occult Slayer line, and there's also another 1% in the Fury of Wilds passive damage reduction. I can't remember. I thought I saw something that they might change. Oh, no, Fury of the Wild is the one. That is the that's from the Epic Destiny Fury of the Wild, not Frenzy Berserker.
Right.
So there you go.
For a grand total of 14%, physical
if you had them all,
damage
right?
reduction.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which that's
pretty substantial.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, that's good.
That's a lot.
It was good. About time they did that.
Yeah. I'm actually kind of hoping that they might change a lot more of the damage reduction that's available into that kind of a style, personally.
Sure.
Just to kind of because damage reduction as it stands right now for players is worthless.
Yeah.
Now, I also understand that if you do this, that this might affect monsters that you're fighting too.
Sure.
But I think it makes a lot more sense in the way that are, at least for the players. Maybe you leave the monsters the same just because of how players deal damage, but although percent, I don't know. But definitely for the players, this is a welcome change, and please.
Yeah, I'd like to
feel
see them
free to
change after
expand
the favorite soul.
Yeah,
as well.
Favorite Souls has that too.
Yep.
I don't think you could just take the entire game and do a 1% per 1-to-1% ratio, but I think you could definitely expand this to other areas, like you said, the favorite soul. It would make damage reduction on items, particularly in later stages of the game, more viable. So I'd like to see them expand that for sure. Some other stuff they did. So the Paladin defensive stance hit point buff was changed to competency, which it always was apparently, but the text was incorrect. And now Asamar's racial hit points bonus has been changed to sacred, which is what Paladin defense said it was. Basically, now the Asamar racial hit points will stack with the Paladin
ones.
Yeah. And I think I don't actually know what the Druid one is off the top of my head, but I thought it was competence.
Yeah, I don't know.
I think it's competence. The bigger one, and this is so those are the things that are targeting classes and races right now. The bigger one this is for everybody, and this is the one that's kind of the big deal. Epic defensive fighting. Your hero has learned to enter a reactive state, protecting them in the chaos of battle by rolling with the punches. But this hampers their ability to engage ranged threats. This is a new epic feat, automatically granted at level 21. It's a toggled ability that, when active, adds a 5% competence bonus to maximum hit points, with an additional 5% for every combat style or fighting style feat you have, to a maximum of 25%. Those numbers initially were 10 and 50, and the feedback essentially was, in various forms, that makes this a requirement for everybody. And we don't like what this feat does because it's the penalties that come later.
Right.
So they change it to 5 to 25%. Now, note that this is a competence bonus, which means it does not stack with the Paladin and Fighter, and we think the Druid stances, right? The kind of the defensive stances that give you hit points. There's a lot of things that give percentage to hit points. This will not stack with any of that. So
right.
And I'd have to check what the percent increase is from Unyielding Sentinel. I don't remember that is off the top of my head.
I want to say 20%, Patrick, but I could be mistaken.
No, sorry, I was trying to think of what the what type of bonus it is.
Oh,
it's an insight bonus. So
maybe it does stack.
So so that will still stack, which it did before with competence. So the applicable feats are the single weapon fighting lines. So all the way up through perfect. It includes the perfect. Two-handed fighting, again including perfect. Two-weapon fighting, again including perfect. So that's how you get plus 20% there. Also, natural fighting counts each time taken. But note, there's only 3 of those.
Yes.
Hey, devs, perfect natural weapon fighting?
That'd be nice.
Just saying.
Verisimilitude, tells you that you really should add that one there, just like everybody else has got the other. They've got their 4. I don't see why the druids can't have theirs.
Yeah. And maybe do something a little different with it too. Have a little fun with it.
Sure.
In any case, now some players have probably rightfully pointed out that hey, shield mastery is not part of this line. I'd like to see shield mastery in here.
Yeah, but you can see why they didn't do that, right? I mean,
no, I can't actually.
Well, hang on. I mean, shields give great defensive, perks. I mean, do they really need, more hit points in addition to shields?
What hit points?
I don't think so.
The hit points you're getting from a shield are going to be a competence bonus anyway. Like if you're talking about the defensive stance and stuff, there are competence bonus anyways. Oh, and by the way, you don't actually need a shield to get those bonuses.
That's
in
right.
the first place. You can just wear heavy armor and get them.
But the shields themselves provide extra defensive,
Sure.
capabilities. So,
there are melee build. So the reason why I think that it's a valid thing to point out is because you talk about like a Vanguard build, right?
Right.
They're not necessarily going for a tank style. They're going for an offensive style, and they may be more durable. And again, these builds probably already have. Are probably because if you're doing a Vanguard build, you have to be a fighter or a paladin to a certain extent. So you're probably splashing in for the defensive stance anyways. So I mean, here's the thing: you put those. It may be kind of irrelevant, but if you put the shield mastery feats in this line, there's only 2 of them. If shield bash would be 3. Which puts it on par with the rest of the fighting lines. Hey, devs, perfect shield mastery? Just saying. But your net is only going to be 5% hit points for 4 feats, assuming you have that. If this potentially putting this in for shield users potentially means that they could not take the defensive line and put more points into other places. So, I think that you could add this, and it's not going to break anything. If anything, it adds more options, because you can essentially exchange. At best, you're going to get 5. You're talking about getting 5% extra hit points. But to do that, you need to add a perfect shield fighting, anyways, because you'd need the 4th one. So I don't think it's going to break the game, and then you're deciding between, do I want to use the defensive stance or from the defender tree, or do I want to just forgo that defender tree and use this instead? And this has other costs, which we haven't talked about yet. So that's kind of what I think. I don't know if they're going to do it, but I think there's a valid point from the Vanguard people saying, hey, it's less of a concern now that the bonus only goes up to 25% when it was a 50% bonus.
Right.
It was kind of.
Oh, that really hurt the shield users quite a bit.
This is less so, but
yeah, true.
And maybe they're trying not to do that because they don't want tanks to get that, but I mean, even if you put in the shield mastery, improved shield mastery, and shield bash as 3 feats in there, that's only a 20% bonus, which they're getting anyways. So, why not? I think it's a holdover from when it was 50%. But let's talk about the penalties for this, or shall we say the trade-offs? Your double shot and range power will be 0 while active. Ouch. This feat is exclusive from ranged stances, such as improved precise shot, archer's focus, Shirati stances, and warlock blast stances.
Now, I have a problem with the warlock blast stances,
because you want the aura to be included. You want
the aura to be included because they're basically melees anyway.
Sure, I'd be fine with that. I think that's a valid. Hey, let's change that. It's also exclusive from the enlarged spell meta magic toggle.
Of course.
And for the reason that is because all spell or spell-like abilities that are affected by meta magics have their range reduced to touch range.
Yep.
There you go. Although there's the things that I'm curious about this that I haven't tested yet is does that include lay on hands and healing hands?
Hmm.
Because I'm not sure. That might be a supernatural ability, and they didn't call out supernatural abilities explicitly. There's going to be a lot of playtesting with this, right? Like, what can you still use with a range?
How can we get around this? Is what it's going to be.
Well, no, but it's not trying to get around it. I'm just trying to see what my limitations are, right?
Yeah.
I'm going to assume like Cocoon and Renewal and those popular ones are going to be reduced to self only or to touch range. There's also a lot of fun things. The feat remains active when dead, so if you come back to life, you don't have to toggle back on. The feat can also be used with other defensive and offensive stances in addition to rage. Cool. Although, again, your other defensive stances aren't necessarily going to be really going to be stacking with this a lot of times, so
right.
Buyer beware. In any case, there's a lot of fun stuff you can do here. A lot of the player reaction was, well, that's stupid. You're taking my range power and double shot to 0. Yes, it's for melees.
It's for melees, yes, obviously.
That's the target change. And same thing with, and again, some of this feedback was when it was a 50% hit point boost, which almost essentially made it mandatory because that's a lot of hit points.
Oh, yeah.
For a lot of people's minds. But, spells having 0 range. Now, I think, and this is part of the devs will talk about in the interview too, is there's some interesting play styles in here, right? If you're going to be a caster that's going to use this and kind of, one of the things they're interested to see is, does this open up touch spells as a more recognized viable option? Do people start using have more use for them because they have open spell slots? Because if they're going to be in this stance, they need short range spells anyways.
So is touch? So in DDO, see, I never really saw a distinction between like range spells, lay on of hands or whatever, and touch. So does that mean you actually have to be right next to the tune that you're going to heal?
Yep.
Or how far away can you be? Is it like
you got to be pretty close?
Okay.
There are touch spells in the game. It's just people don't tend to use them. They tend to be lower level spells anyways.
Right.
And 2, most people who are using spells a lot aren't generally in touch range of monsters anyways. Right?
Sure.
If you actually went by true pen and paper, healing is a touch spell.
Right.
All of the healing that we have is supposed to be a touch spell. They
Right.
made it range. Thank goodness. Because that would be a real hand-drawn playstyle. But you can do that to yourself now if you choose.
Yeah. Otto's Irresistible Dance is a touch spell. I remember that now.
Yes, it is.
Yeah. Okay.
So that's probably the best touch spell in the game. So that kind of gives you an idea of the range we're talking about touch spells. Now, my understanding is that this includes cones, so that it shortened cone range a lot. I do believe that you can, like, if you cast an area of effect, you can still cast it on yourself, like a mass cure spell would still work,
right?
And stuff like that. So there's also, now the other part about this too is if you again, remember, you're only going to get 5% to give this up unless you have some of these feats, which probably most of those don't. My spellcasting classes, the only 2 that this would really do a lot for would be my bard, who has single weapon fighting, and my druid. No one else has any of these feats, so they're only be getting 5% hit points to not be able to cast spells ranged. Having said that, there are some fun things you can do here with, if you're just kiting, you don't need double shot and range power. You just need to be able to hit the thing and get its attention. And you can cast Blade Barrier. Blade Barrier is a no range spell anyways. So there are some fun things you can still do with this feat that you may find to be particularly useful. So I almost kind of wish that they would have put some of the ranged feats in there just to kind of mess with people. I mean, if you want it for kiting, sure, here you go, right? Yeah. But I know why they didn't. Anyways, there you go. Anything else you want to say about this?
Nope.
I'm excited for it. I think there's a couple of my characters that the only thing they essentially lose by toggling on the feat is cocoon,
Right.
and I'm okay with that.
I got a battle cleric that I've written up. He's gonna be a whelm user, but he's gonna be single weapon fighting, whelm user with an orb in his left hand. So
Oh, fun.
I can see where this, he'll be, if he's gonna be healing, he's gonna be just doing, mass cures based, centered on himself kind of thing.
No, my monk is like super stoked for this.
Oh, sure, yeah. Oh,
It's
Arkat
great
is
for my monk.
Yeah, Arkat is looking forward to it as well.
And just if you're concerned about adding 25% hit points to everyone, sure, in the normal epic, normal, hard, elite range, it's gonna feel like a lot of hit points. When you start getting into higher skulls, I mean,
yeah, no,
this is like maybe a hit.
Yeah,
it's not gonna get you much farther.
Yeah.
The other thing, so this did not make it into Update 39 Patch 2 preview. Kensai's Power Surge is no longer considered an action boost. It now has its own set of 5 charges per rest. So why are they doing that? The issue is that if you right now, if you trigger Power Surge and you have the Prowess or Deadly Rain sentient weapon set, it puts those abilities on a 1-minute cooldown instead of the 20-second cooldown that it's supposed to be, because it has the same cooldown as the action boost. There's also other problems. So basically, Power Surge needs to not be an action boost. They've kind of considered it a bug, and the way that they decided on doing that is that they're going to change it to be, it's no longer an action boost. It has its own kind of thing, and you get 5 charge rest. Steelstar wrote that this isn't the first time that Power Surge's nature as a, quote, action boost that acts like other action boosts. In 2 respects, while ignoring others, has caused bugs. Over time, they've been working on bringing action boosts into a more uniform fashion that prevents these kinds of bugs. Sometimes that means making sure they follow all the action boosts, all the rules that they made. So for balance and technical reasons, including this exact bugs that we're seeing with Prowess and Deadly Rain, action boosts are supposed to follow 3 rules. They last for 20 seconds, they have a base 30-second cooldown, and using any action boost puts all other action boosts on cooldown.
Right.
Power Surge doesn't do any of those things. So they decided that it either needs to be an action boost or it needs to be not an action boost skill. So they went with not an action boost skill. They actually kind of put out 3 options, one of which was make it an action boost. But they kind of ultimately decided, nope, we're going to, and most people were kind of picking this option anyways. So now it's going to be, you get this ability 5 times per rest. And then someone said, hey, if you're going to do that, can we add more uses with the cores? And they basically said, yeah, it's still subject to change, but tentatively they're going to add +1 charge with core 5, which is the 1 cut, and +2 charges with the core 6. So a pure fighter that took the capsule would end up with 8, which I think is a good compromise.
Sure.
I might have said 2 and 2, or maybe 2. I don't know. For reference, my fighter currently has 12 uses of Power Surge, so I would be losing 4. But I understand the reasoning, and I'm totally fine with it.
So then, since it's not going to be a boost, it's therefore still not going to share a cooldown with the other things that are actually boosts.
Correct.
Okay, well, that's
Which it
good.
did before, anyways.
I'm glad. Right. I'm glad they kept it that way.
Also, Kensai's 1 cut no longer acts like an action boost in some edge cases as well, so there's some issues there. But yeah, so that's kind of what they're doing there. I think it's pretty well fine. I think it'd be nice if you could get some more uses through other means as well. There's some options there, I think. But I also like the idea that you're getting to a point where there's more of an incentive to have more levels in fighter, right?
Mm-hmm.
So just getting the Power Surge, and then you'd have a bunch of uses. Now you have to get more uses, you have to go farther into fighter. So there's a little bit of interesting thing there as But yeah, that's gonna hit some people, and I definitely am not trying to mitigate that. It's gonna hit me too. But I like that it's not gonna break other things.
Right,
too, so.
right, sure.
The last thing we didn't talk about, they fixed an issue that was causing the quest Enter the Kobold to not be completed, so we'll get to see that reopened as well. I'm pretty sure that has to do with the night puzzle.
Okay.
So the puzzle room that you had to move like a knight.
Sure.
They tried to. There was an issue with that was causing that to not complete, and then you couldn't complete the quest. So they tried to fix it, and then they broke it worse. Oops.
Yeah, I never liked that puzzle, so I really don't do that quest. So, yeah.
I never minded it. It's a little disorienting, but it was
Sure.
kind of an interesting little thing there. Not the hardest part of not the hard part of the quest.
Oh
though.
no, the end was the hardest part of the quest.
The end fight is a pretty high ramp in difficulty there. Bonus days, plus 35% crafting boost through August 26th. That's today. Store news, store sales. Honor your guilds. You get 25% off of Astral Shards, Guild Renown, 50% off of Guild Charters and Guild Airship Beacons through August 30th. The coupon for the week is a lesser Slayer count boost with the coupon code SLAYBOOST. All right. Community news. Okay, I'm gonna try to cruise through. These are there's 3 chronicles since I was gone, and I want to hit them because I want people to know about the different things that came out while I was gone. So if this is your primary news source, I want you to be able to, cause this will be condensed because obviously I'm not going to read the sales and stuff from the past weeks because that would just be silly. So what do we got? So the 295th Chronicle was published August 9th. So there was a regular Friday night raid group in the Galanda Fellowship. DDO Players News had their interview with Severlin come out from Gen Con, as did Axel. So if you didn't listen to those, I'd recommend those. We'll talk about some of that stuff with the devs in my interview after the show, but there's some other stuff in there as well. Unsinful's Favorite Soul Build Guide came out. We can do the comments. What's your most favorite inn in DDO?
Blue Water Inn.
Oh yeah?
Yeah, it's the only one that I can think of is actually has the word inn in the title. Everything else is taverns from what I can recall. So I thought that was the obvious choice.
Sure. Yeah, that works. I always liked the Leaky Dinghy. It's an old one, but I always liked the name. Let's see. The guild for the week, Zoriat Asylum Escapees, level 90 guild on Oregon Nesson. They are seeking all kinds of players, both new and experienced. You can contact Radical Top in-game. The fan site stuff for that week, Mickey's Raids had 83, week 83. DDO Players News had episode 187. McVegan Pants had an episode. SIP had a new blog post on the life of a downtrodden kobold. We got a shout out for our last episode. Let's see, episode 115 of DDO Wiki Talk. Hephaestus had part 3 of his origin story. DDOPL ran Crystal Cove. Bard Life with Glendower. Doug Glendower had an episode, as did Fridays and Ice with Bachelagora. The 296th Chronicle, this was published on August 16th. Axel tested out the new melee hit point buff, so if you want to see kind of more how that worked in action, you can check that out there. Strimtom also explored the new falconry tree. The comment for the week, how do you cook a giant crab?
In a big giant pot.
Yeah, I was trying to think of where is a big giant pool that you can a volcano maybe? Kind of maybe it'd be hard to get out though.
A lot of hot water. So Yellowstone.
Sure.
Like Old Faithful.
You might lose the crab in the sky though. See the guild for the week. It's a Lithuanian language guild on Galanda. I'm gonna attempt to pronounce this, and my apologies. Lituve is looking for people to join them. The guild has a Discord server, fully stocked Kraken, is accepting new players and long-term veterans alike. So if you can speak Lithuanian, that is a guild for you. The fan site news, Ginger Spice increased his Intimidate. Mickey had raids week 84. Streaming with Even was back. Brighter Days Ahead ran the Battle for Evening Star. DDO Players News had episode 188. Inside the Magic Circle with Tone Station had an episode. Hephaestus had part 4 of his story. There was another episode of DDO Wiki Talk, Bard Life with Doug Lundauer, Fridays in Ice, and Thrilling Heroics with McVegan Pants went through the first run for White Plume Mountain. The 297th Chronicle, that's this week's Chronicle. Damsels of DDO had episode 94. Ladies are almost up to 100. Let's see, City Streams had his last epic Paladin life. The comment for the week. The longest comment in Chronicle history.
Yeah, it's a long one, yeah.
You're wandering around the harbor when you come across a cellar of unique and oddities. The cellar shows you a smooth, textured, round object. He says it's magical, but does not know the extent of its powers. When you touch the object, you can feel the magic energy radiating off of it. Before you can determine what the object is, the seller snatches it away with a smirk and says 500,000 platinum. Do you buy the object or leave it for the next adventurer?
No, you buy it because 500,000 platinum in this game is nothing.
Right?
Yeah.
That's one option. I think this depends on my character, right? Because if it's my rogue, I'm totally picking this guy's pocket. If I'm on a barbarian, I'm probably going to intimidate him to tell me what it does, because he clearly has more information that he's not giving me because he's smirking. So, but my paladin is just going to pony up the money.
The trustful paladin.
Yeah, the lawful good paladin. The guild for the week, hail and well met. The legendary warriors of Galanda on a level 200 guild. It's always looking for active players. They do epic raids all the time and have a lot of fun together. There you go. Fan site news. Mickey's raids hit week 85. DDO players news at episode 189. She Who Should Not Be Named. DDO PL did level 20 solo challenges. Streaming with Even had Stradapalooza. SIP's newest blog post was about plundering Crystal Cove. This is always a fun one because SIP is not someone who I believe he writes for one of the online magazines. I don't remember which one. I want to say Massively OP, but don't quote me on that. But he has kind of returned to the game after several years off. So this is a blog post from someone who it's all new to him. So it's the first time running. So if you want to read that perspective, there's an option for that. Episode 117 of DDO Wiki Talk. Brock and Friends brought back role-playing to DDO. And Bird Life had an episode as well. And of course, always there's the weekly Wednesday lunchtime live stream for that as well. Other video I wanted to point out for folks, Ginger Sprice's overview and review of Update 38 Caster Druid changes. So he did a nice video. I think it was about 15 minutes or so. 30 to 50 minutes, somewhere in that range. So if you are interested in kind of how Caster Druids changed, he's a great expert on Druids. I'm really curious to see how his build changes with the new Epic Defensive feat.
Right, that hit points, yeah.
Because he's a Druid tank, but he's not a bear tank. He's a Caster Druid tank. So that'll be really interesting to see what he does with that. We'll get his feedback on that sometime soon, I hope. RDDO is also back, so we'll link to the new website there. DDOCast news. DDOCast Plant returns. We're going to start Season 4 this Tuesday. We're still at our normal, or 5:30 p.m. Pacific time. For that, we're going to be running the new level 21 quests, and then I don't remember where we're going after that. I think to Evening Star, but
we'll figure it out.
And we'll have a new player. I don't know if you want to spill the beans on that or not.
Let's just make it a surprise.
Make it a surprise. So have a new player there. Also, something else to note. If you listen to this live, you can catch the D&D on DDO stream tonight at 7 p.m. Eastern Time. I will be there swinging a large axe. But you should also be able to catch that on YouTube or later.
Who else is in that group, Patrick? Besides Kevin.
That's a complicated question. People who have played on that is let's see, Even Notes, Bonnie Bew, Saba, Mithri, Draculetta, Jerry, Bittersteel, and Fennicus have all been in there. And I think I don't think anyone's going to get upset at me about this. There's going to be more information and changes about D&D on DDO stream forthcoming next week or two. There'll probably be an announcement more of that. But I'll tease it right now that there's more stuff coming there, so stay tuned. Right. Let's see. With that, close out the show. Anything else you wanna plug here before we head out?
Nope, don't think so. Just looking forward to DDO, Splat on Tuesday. So
yeah, should be a lot of fun. Getting to play the new quests. I've only done them all once, so
yeah, same here.
Be kind of fun. So thanks for listening to the show. Thanks to Arkat for joining me today. I really appreciate it. And
thanks for having me.
Yeah, always. Thanks to all the other contributors for DDOCast, to sending some games, and Wizard of the Coast for supporting DDOCast and making DDO happen, and Cyberbears for hosting the podcast. If you'd like to support the show, you can visit our website, DDOcast.com, or you can support us on Patreon. All that money goes to prizes and stuff. If you have a DDO-themed webpage, or you Twitch DDO and you'd like to be featured on our website, you can email us at ddocast@gmail.com. You can also hit us up for show notes, MP3s, our calendar, previous shows, and other fun stuff at ddocast.com. If you'd like to be part of the show, if you have a comment on this episode, a question you'd like to hear us answer, or a topic you'd like to hear us discuss, or you just want to say hi, you can leave us a comment, or you can email us at ddocast@gmail.com. You can also find us on social media, or follow us for latest cast updates at ddocast on Twitter. Let's see. So stay tuned. Coming up next is our interview with Severlin and Torc. Hello, DDOCast fans. This is Patrick. I am here today live, well, recorded, but I am actually here in person with... I want you to just introduce yourselves.
So my name is Brent Walton. I'm known as Torc. And my name is Rob Ciccolini. I'm on the forums on Severlin.
Yeah, so we're just here. We're going to talk a little bit about some of the stuff you guys have been working on and have pumped out. And just starting with White Plume Mountain, which is the last update for DDO. And maybe just talk a little bit about adapting White Plume Mountain. Why did you use White Plume Mountain? What was really fun to work on? What was really challenging to work on? Just kind of take us through what some of that process looked like.
The initial impetus for doing White Plume Mountain was the sentient weapons. When we went with sentient weapons and the design, we were kind of thinking about Black Razor, Whelm, and Wave. So we definitely wanted to have an opportunity to do sentient weapon versions of those. And White Plume was... So that was sort of like the, hey, what if we did sentient weapons and then did these weapons from this module? And after that, it was just adapting the module, but doing it twist so it works well in a video game.
So on my end, which was okay, now we're building this thing after we decided we want to build it. So White Plume was of I would say an era of modules in the early D&D days where I would say the Dungeon Master and the players had built a relationship where the players had beaten a bunch of stuff, and now the Dungeon Master was really turning up the juice. And, like Tomb of Horrors is another example of this. But it was like, I want to say the word whiz-bang, like just crazy death traps and very elaborate, convoluted, just we're trying to create a challenge here, and it's not, the narrative wrapper really is, there's a mad wizard trying to kill you. We kind of embraced that, which is why White Plume has pretty much all the amazing death traps it does. But yeah, it was kind of, yeah.
So what was one of your favorite parts about working on White Plume, and what was maybe one of the more challenging things?
Favorite part, challenging, I would say, was rising water planes. They do a lot of stuff with water in White Plume. There's like 2 major encounters that involve water flooding or coming up. So there was a little bit of a technical challenge there. Pulling off the visuals, I would say is part of it. You know, like this tiered aquarium, and like building out the geography and making sure our monsters can handle that. I would say the other major thing, though, is really there are situations that occur in these classic modules where it's like the what ifs are, okay, the players are presented with things like a bunch of platforms they jump across. And if they jump across the platforms, the adventure continues. And if one of them falls, what happens then? We had to add some more what happens then in those situations, because in a tabletop game, everyone's kind of wrangling that with their dungeon master. I mean, some players are like, yep, I fell in the bubbling mud and that's the end of my adventure, and I'm rolling a new character because that's how we roll with our group. And other ones, the dungeon master's like fudging it and he catches himself on the ledge and maybe his favorite magic item falls in the mud instead. Like, pen and paper experiences translate very differently to a computer game in certain situations where we kind of can't stop the show. So, like in the mud room, we added an encounter where there are mudmen down there potentially, and there's another way of getting back up, and there's this frictionless pit that, you know, again, you fall into a pit of certain death spikes that we added encounter. So, kind of massaging those. When we started, we literally tried to translate the experience, and then we do the play tests, and then like you kind of see what happens. It's like, well, we're a computer game, and these are the things that are kind of falling out of it, and what happens to the player next if they don't hit that platform.
How did playtesting of losing your favorite magic item go over?
We didn't actually do that. We could have like put disjunction, like, was it the disjunction spheres? I think we've used them once. We didn't think of using them here. Yeah.
Well, so one of the things we talked about before we started recording, I think it was really interesting. Tell us about the crab encounter. Oh, yeah. Okay. So like when you read these modules and some things jump out at you and some things don't. And I would say that for White Plume, one of the ones that would jump out for most people is you're going to fight a giant crab in an underground lake that's filled with boiling water, that if you mess things around, you spurt boiling water and eventually the room floods. And we actually didn't do this, but you could have gotten blown out of the top of the volcano. Like the module's written where you could do this scene where it's like you're fighting the crab and you wreck the walls and the whole thing's collapsing, and then you'll literally get blown out the top of the volcano, but you can like grab like Whelm and like force cube and like get out of it. It's like, I would say, like, you know, a lot of these things are written with like you're expecting, they kind of leave possibilities open from the dungeon master, and you know, you kind of, I would think the writer probably was like, yes, and this is like, this will get blown out of the top of a volcano and some player will be saved by Whelm. And we really can't do that in a video game sometimes. Like, we work with artificial reality, but it's still a reality in terms of like, it takes a lot of work to build all the build the possibilities we have. Getting the feeling of the crab and the spurting water and the boiling, basically you boil alive with the crab, and getting that work was when we got there, and just, yeah. When you did some research on like how crabs fight.
Oh yes, the anime. Yeah. So yeah, when we're ever dealing with a new monster and it's such a little reference to reality, we look at what the creature does in real life. And crabs, they fight each other. It's terribly vicious. They do it in particular ways and with particular mannerisms that we adapt into the animation. They spit water at each other. So like when that crab spits at you, that's actually something crabs do when they fight each other. So yeah, we'll take that for what it's worth. The crab, crabs have their own personality, and we kind of just grabbed onto that and captured it in this particular arc giant crab.
White Plume saw something new. You had the bonus pack of stuff. I'm just curious, is this something that maybe players can expect to see more of, or was this kind of just a one-off thing because you want to do something special for White Plume Mountain?
The players really liked it. We like it. We like an opportunity to put more cosmetics and goodies in. So we'll probably do it for our classic modules. And then for our normal dungeon packs, we'll at least at first not do it so that the players aren't like flooded with cosmetics. And so we'll do one for like the next classic pack that we do, or if a pack has a particular resonance of like maybe if it's a pack at the end of a long story arc and you're fighting one of our big villains, we might do it then too. But pretty much for now, I think our goal is to keep it to the classic packs to sort of add memorabilia to the classic dungeons you played, if that makes sense.
Sure. I'm not sure how much we may not be talking a lot about this, but Beacon of was it Beacon of Grace, right? Was the Beacon of Hope the enhancement, the favorite soul enhancement tree? Walk us through what you can about like what was the design intent and what were we kind of going for play style wise.
One of the things about healing is it's very reactive. Typically, if people run in, you wait until people get damaged, and then you throw healing. We wanted one that was proactive, one that you had to keep stuff up and you had to take actions and make decisions as the fight progressed before stuff happened. And the nice thing about this is, first of all, the healing is more active because you have to actually aim it, because the main healing is in a cone. But all of the little buffs and stuff that you put on were our attempt to make a tree that's more active, proactive rather. You run in and you start buffing people before things even happen, and you kind of just give goodness instead of removing badness. So that giving goodness, like, hey, I am actively making you better constantly as I dump stuff on my party, was something that we wanted to do because that gift giving seems like a different feel for healers.
Sure. And then what about the falconry enhancement tree? What was kind of the intent there? Maybe what was the inspiration behind that? Because it's a pretty different tree with the bird and stuff like that. So where did that come from?
We wanted, well, so it started with, I wanted to do something natural with wisdom to hit and damage.
Mm-hmm.
And we had told the players that wisdom to hit and damage was coming in a universal enhancement tree a while ago. So I wanted something primal feeling to go in that. And the other thing that I wanted is our pet classes are limited. You essentially either have your, I call them the war dogs, but it's the Warforged, like, dog artificer sets for artificers. And, you kind of have the summoned wolves for druids, but none of them stay relevant. Well, we need to work on the balancing of them, and they die a lot. So instead, I wanted something with more big beats. So I'm fighting along, and when I hit the button, the pet does something bigger. And that was sort of the design of it. And then have stuff that supported a wide variety of builds. And there's some fun stuff in there, like the sprint boost. If you don't have a sprint boost on your character, is really fun, and a lot of the things are very cool. As I'm playing it, it's funny because when I attack with a weapon with the bird, generally against trash, stuff just dies. Like, it'll die before the bird actually swoops down and hits it. But it's really nice on champions when you hit 3 champions in a row that you're able to trip with it. It's a little delayed, and we'd like to maybe bring that in a bit, but I hit the button and then the bird does something, and it's a bigger deal with a lower cooldown rather than I'm constantly doing something or the bird is constantly picking at them. And then having the bird not be attackable just makes the tree easier to balance in a wider variety of builds.
Sure.
Yeah, it's like we want that moment where, like, I have a pet and I'm gonna say sick 'em, and it's like totally distilled into the sick 'em moment, and we're not dealing with the side effects of there's the pet out there and maybe he died in the lava. That's not happening here, right. And all the things that could go wrong. It's like, no, this is the sick 'em button. It'll always be the sick 'em button, and sick 'em will happen as long as you're alive. And, those complexities aren't there, so it's really distilled down to that moment.
Yeah. So we've now got 3 universal enhancement trees, and you guys are working on kind of going through the different classes. So what's kind of next on the class path? You've been doing this for what, 2-3 years almost now?
We still have to finish Arcane. So one of the things that arcanes are good at is DC casting, and one of the things that they typically aren't that good at, or they get scaled out of, is damage casting. So we want to fix that. We'd like to have some options to be able to actually deliver damage consistently. We don't want to take your mana out as a resource that you have to pay attention to, because that's a core thing of the class. But we definitely think that right now you could waste a whole bar of mana trying to kill some of our creatures, and we do want the damage caster to be a thing. The answer to that shouldn't be play a warlock.
Sure.
So we want to do something with sorcerer where not only is it better at damage casting, but I think we want to do that sorcerers are kind of like the crit caster. So they get a lot of crit damage, so when you crit with a spell, it's like big numbers come up. And
to kind of differentiate it from wizard a little bit more.
Yeah, so once we, and then the other thing is there's a enhancement on your sentient weapon where it stops all mana costs. So in that small time frame, you can use any spell you want. And there's a lot of cool spells out there that just aren't mana efficient, so they don't get used. But when you drop the casting cost to 0 for a short time, then the bar that you use for casting changes. So all of a sudden, like, you want to use all your big spells that normally would be too expensive. You drain your mana bar as much as you can before your mana cost comes back. So that's something we may revisit in form of an enhancement or something, so you don't have to wait until sentient weapons to do that play style. And then obviously Eldritch Knight needs buffs. Pale Master has always had its own weird niche because it heals different than everyone else. It's like Warforged, only even worse because you don't have an Artificer class to help it. So we have to figure out what we're going to do on Pale Master in order to make that class viable. The other thing is Pale Master is a lot about self-healing in the heroic, hard, and epic game. But once you get to Reaper mode, because self-healing is reduced a lot, the sort of niche of Pale Master goes away. So we have to fix that. And I think for universal trees, the falconry was kind of a cool template to do familiars.
Oh.
And we're wondering if we could do a universal tree that the first enhancement required you to have at least one arcane class, and then do a familiar tree that represents you getting your imp or your quasit or your pseudo dragon or your we're not evil. Well,
we could be.
Okay, you say we're not evil, but like, let's face it, warlocks ride the line.
I'm sure there's plenty of players out there that would not mind the option of having an evil alignment, or there's probably many that already kind of quote role play as an evil.
The game isn't about letting the imp draw you towards evil. It's about keeping it on the straight and narrow.
Right. Yeah, there you go. That'll work.
So lawful neutral is the new evil? That's what I'm getting out of this.
But I don't know how a universal tree that's only arcane will go over. So we'll see on that design space. But we can do a lot with the same things where, you call your pet. Almost all of the familiars had some kind of lore way to CC. Crowd control, whether it's a sleep or a stinger or whatnot. So we could have ways in the tree that it's helping you cast, and then a couple things where it jumps down and puts someone to sleep for you, or I don't know what I don't want to use sleep. It would be more likely to be a stun, so it's useful because in any pub people knock everything out of sleep way too quick. But I think that there's some interesting things there to have, and the familiar is a core sort of fantasy of D&D in almost all its incarnations. We would like to do that.
So we've got all these really cool trees. We've got every class has at least 3 trees now. We've got 3 universal enhancement trees, a lot of racial trees, most of which are pretty darn useful. Have you explored at all having more action points? Because the action point math, at least what I've found, is it's getting a lot more complicated for some of these builds because there's so many more options than we used to have.
We don't shy away from power creep, but the action point limit is a hard cap on. One of the core skills of the game is making a build within the restrictions of not being able to get everything you want. So something like Harper agent or Vistani knife fighter or falconry, they're not meant to increase the power of your character. They're meant to increase the matrix of decisions you have to make. So we have to be very careful, because even adding 1 AP offers the capability, for instance, of someone getting to core 6 in 2 trees, which is a big deal.
You're talking about the capstone.
Yes.
So you'd probably, if you did go that way, you'd probably want to lock that out or something like that.
Lock it.
Yeah.
I think that I don't necessarily think we need more action points. I don't know that they would make. I mean, for race, because the racial trees tend to be less powered than everything else, that's kind of different, because those can be like a bonus. But for the typical AP, a lot of the fun is figuring out the perfect build, and increasing AP may actually detract from the fun of the game rather than adding it.
Sure.
I don't know that a Falcon Vistani War Priest is any more flavorful or fun to build for once you open up that AP thing.
Yeah, no, the limit. I feel like in a lot of cases, it's all about limitation. Actually, sort of makes a lot of gameplay work. As odd as that sounds.
Yeah, that's something you guys have said in the past too. All right, I want to switch gears a little bit and talk about melee survivability, because you're starting to really address that as I won't say a problem or necessarily even a concept, but it's something you're looking at and tweaking and working on. So let's start big picture. What are you looking? What's the goal here? Why do we need this?
So the goal is, D&D is a fantasy game about playing characters, and we want to make sure you can play any character concept that you enjoy and any difficulty in the game. So I guess where we got a little concerned is we weren't sure if we could take a sword swinging ranger and he was going to make it all the way to Reaper 10, that he would have a spot in a high Reaper party.
Is anyone supposed to make it to Reaper 10?
Yeah, I was going to say.
Well, that's true. Maybe Reaper 10, but it's like whatever the bar is, you're pushing the difficulty curve. We don't want anyone to get too left behind. And when we mean what your character build is, people what a character build is very complicated. But as an overall thing, a lot of characters in a broad category, I like to swing swords. A person who likes to get in there and swing swords, they should be able to, feel like that's not a bad. They should never feel like that's a bad decision on the kind of meta side. On the meta side,
the broadest category is this: when we watch gameplay, whether it's in game and we're invisible and looking at your encounters, or we're watching videos or whatever, if there's a good class diversity, or at least a good archetype diversity, that's fine. So if we see some melees, we see some ranged, we see a tank, we see some wizards, we see some sorcerers, and we see some warlocks, then that's great. When we start seeing that the best party is all ranged, or a tank, a wizard, and no melee, we start looking at that. There have been parties like that. Recently, they've realized that the melees can really do big damage against helpless, and that's one of their big advantages, because a lot of them get helpless, and so when the wizard CCs things in High Reaper, the melees can really cut him down more than the burst of the range. Then it's probably okay, but it's weird, because as the players have been... So, our ability to work on things cannot be immediate. So sometimes we're looking at melee survivability because there was Reaper came out and there was a zone where it was only ranged, and then people experimented with melee, and then there was a second zone where it was heavy ranged. And during that second zone, we were looking at it and we were like, oh, we're not seeing melee. Why? So when we looked at it, it's because when bad things happen, the ranged run and the melee die. I mean, essentially, if your CC breaks or something weird happened or you aggro another group, the melee are in the thick of things, and when it turns around and punches the melee in the face twice, the melee would just die. And the range, because they have the blurs and all of the stuff, they would run and probably survive until the tank. So what we wanted to do is we wanted to give melee one more hit. But one more hit in the higher difficulties is a lot of hit points. And we didn't want to do it with PRR because it increases the efficiency of healing and rewards the bad play. We wanted to do it with a hit point pool because if you keep doing that, then you're going to run your healer out of healing. Whereas with PRR, the healing efficiency is much better. They just go bam, and and you actually need less healing, and that's why we were doing it with hit points.
Plus, hit points works in everything.
Yes,
like a lot of our damage resistances, there's always like 1 or 2 loopholes that would punch you. Hit points works in everything, so it was going to work and not end up with less weird.
It's pretty hard to find someone who doesn't want more hit points.
Yeah, hit points is nice.
Yeah.
Now, the problem is the metagame is ever evolving. So, we have seen the metagame evolve 3 times while we were working on this.
Yeah.
Right? Then a metagame came back where there were a lot of melee, and we're like, ooh, should we do this? And then there was a metagame where there was like a group that was streaming with almost all warlocks, and we're like, oh, maybe. And then the metagame changed back towards melee. And so the people on the watching, we can only develop so fast. I mean, we start, we design, and we go through the players' council, we go through the feedback loops, the metagame changes, people are like, well, the current metagame, and then the metagame changes again. So that's one of the challenging things when you're dealing with as many builds as we have, and with a difficulty as hard as Reaper, because let's face it, when you are getting at the higher level of Reaper, the level of what in which they're operating, if one thing goes wrong, you can just wipe the whole party. I mean, everyone's 2 hits away from going away. The metagame is developing, and it's almost like sometimes we're developing towards a metagame that already changed twice. Nonetheless, we would like to see a situation later on that the melee doesn't automatically die if things go on in Reaper 5. I'm not talking about Reaper 10. If Reaper 10, if something goes wrong and the whole party wipes, you shouldn't be doing Reaper 10. Like, Reaper 10 was like the pie in the sky. Like, you shouldn't be doing this, and people are doing whole lives of Reaper 10, so good for them. And, like, I don't want to nerf Reaper 10, but, like, the melee should be able to have a little bit of survivability in the mix when bad things happen.
Sure.
Yeah, we were looking at this. I mean, we constantly look at it, but admittedly, we're also trying to develop like the future things we're trying to get to you guys. So it's sometimes you get a little behind the curve, but at the high difficulty Reapers, there's so much going on in terms of teamwork, and when you're with a team where the teamwork is working, the survivability of people is on a really different curve than, like, say, if you were pugging. And that's kind of one of the wrinkles we're trying to iron out is that we have people who are people who have found their own solutions, which is the perfect thing, right? And then there are people who are still struggling, and it's hard sometimes to target certain groups and adjust their gameplay and not affect other groups. So it's been something there's been a lot of discussion, and there's been a lot going on with the forums, and we've been trying to suss through it.
I like what Sev said too about when things go wrong, the range run and the melee die, right? Like, even when you've got the really great teamwork, the things, especially if you're doing like higher skull raids, the encounters just last longer, so there's more opportunity for things to go pear-shaped.
Yeah.
So.
And it's an interesting thing because the melee are providing they are a better damage platform, and there's some times where you need the damage. Like, if you don't get the job done fast enough, you're going to have a different problem.
Legendary Shroud is probably the portals is probably a really prime example.
Right, and there's plenty of cases where the decision point is content specific. Is like, and we're just trying to make sure everyone has the tools to play the characters they want to play, and everyone's still having fun and challenge. But yeah, we have a very complicated game meta.
So you talked briefly about the hit points thing, that you guys pitched this idea of having a stance,
the epic defense
stance that everyone just gets when you get to epic levels. That's gone down a little bit. It was initially you could get up to a 50% hit point bonus. That's been changed now to up to 25%, but there's always those limitations on it.
Yes.
Can you talk a little bit about those and kind of the design and the reasoning behind some of those?
Sure. So we started with the whole, like, we're pretty sure we need to make melees tougher, right? That's where we started at. That's a really hard thing to do in our game, because who are melees? it's not, a fighter doesn't necessarily have to be melee. Monks,
it's not class specific.
Right, exactly. Monks definitely, maybe they're melees, but maybe they're shuriken. So we didn't really, it's like, okay, how do we define a melee? And we ended up actually developing this effect where we shorten the range of your spells. That's actually it's one of the most interesting things about the epic defensive stance is actually how it changes the spellcasting system. And we ended up parsing out we did as a stance because our stances often have odd rules or headers to them. They change your gameplay, like a stance is a gameplay change. And we approach this thing as a stance, where the stance is basically going to make the ranged avenues not as effective, but it's going to boost your survivability. So it's a player decision point. It's available to any epic character. We didn't want to make everyone respec. We wanted to be able to work on this problem without having people to juggle, change the builds around too much. Honestly, it was a theory that we tried out, and honestly, once we actually toned down the spell range, it ended up being a kind of a different gameplay mode in of itself, and it's inherently interesting to deal with that limitation. Like limitation, often so much of what makes games good is defined by that limitation, and we're still trying to figure out the power level and some of the toys we're going to attach to it, but like. The stance itself, I'm not going to be casting long range. I'm not turning off my ability to kite effectively is basically what it does, but I'm going to be more survivable. It's basically it's the starting point. I say because the build meta is so complicated and we have so many classes. We don't expect that stance to solve the problem for anyone, and it probably shouldn't. But
you mean not solve a problem for everyone?
Yeah.
Some people. You said won't solve the problem for anyone.
Oh, sorry for everyone. Sorry for it might not solve the problem for everyone, but it's kind of like a base foundation we can work off of, and then we could add things to it. Maybe we add Destiny abilities that maybe amplify it a little bit, or we just put tweaks like an example would say barbarians got 2 tweaks, right? Like the barbarians got their survivability bonus, but they also have access to this. So barbarians might kind of cross that threshold, and is that they're not tank, like you have the DPS barbarians, which are not tanks. They don't have the AC, or they probably will have decent hit points, but they're not going to have tank hit points. But they might end up being they'll be at a different survival vector than our melee, and maybe they'll take 3 or 4 hits instead of 2 on the really high Reapers, and we'll see how that works. We're basically, it's going to take some iteration.
One of the things I like about the design is it takes a whole bunch of stuff that's in the game, meaning touch cast spells, which you would never normally consider because, hey, they're too dangerous and they're not effective, and all of a sudden it's like, wow, are these a thing now? Like if I turn this on and everything is only touch cast, what kind of gameplay do I have? Does shock and grasp become a thing? Do I run around and do touch cast stuff and throw down walls and point blank spells? So it opens up a whole new kind of gameplay that also might help Eldritch Knight once we up it. Mm-hmm. So the other thing is, I'm sure there's someone out there right now. One of the things I love about DDO is the build thing is so complex that there's a lot of outliers. And there's earlier we said, hey, we think that Melee is a good platform. There's someone out there right now with a really kick-ass range build that outperforms all the Melee they know that is laughing at us.
Right. Because
they're already doing more damage than Melee, and we'll see it in 2 metas from now. But that's cool, and it's one of the reasons that we like working on the game rather than disadvantage.
It's kind of a trick of keeping ahead of the player creativity, because they only outnumber you 1,000 to 1.
Yeah, well, we don't want to keep ahead of it either. We want the players to be able to find those new builds, as long as it's not transformative to party makeup. In other words, we don't mind if people find outlier builds, but once someone says to someone else, you can't come on our adventure because you're playing this class or you're playing this concept, then we'd like to boost that concept so that they can... maybe not the exact build, but if you like playing a melee, or you like playing a shield fighter, or you know what I mean? You should be able to go on most of the content.
Yeah. Whatever heroic fantasy you have.
Yeah.
And when I say heroic, I mean generally heroic, not just heroic difficult.
So there's a place in DDO for the 8 bard, 6 sorcerer, 6 wizard build.
Well, maybe not, but there should be for the damage caster.
Sure.
Right? Like, we don't know what your build is going to be, but clearly not many people are bringing straight casters outside of warlocks to the damage table to deliver damage.
Right.
And if someone wants to play a caster that likes doing fireballs and flame bolts and damage, and we don't provide that, never see it in gameplay, that's something we want to fix. Thus, we want to fix the sorcerer stuff. Now, I'm sure we'll leave it to the players to figure out what the exact build will be for it.
Yeah. Sure. So talk a little bit about City of Sharn, because that's coming soon, ish, to be determined. But that's something you guys mentioned at Gen Con. What do you, maybe give us a quick flyby? What are you looking at doing? What are you hoping to capture with Sharn?
Well, we want to do more urban type encounters. I think we did some early on in Stormreach when, for instance, the Sharn Syndicate was very urban and had an urban flavor, and we haven't done it for a while. We've been bringing players out to various areas outside. And I think for Stormreach is played out. I don't know that it offers a platform with which to challenge like epic level characters, but once you get to Sharn, everything's different, right? Sharn is like the city of Eberron where stuff happens. It's dangerous. There are high level characters there. There's wheeling and dealing that affects the world. There's a wide range of people in terms of all social classes and strata. There's extremely lawful and goodly things happening, and there's also extremely evil and high-end things, and there's stuff happening in the back alleys that can also affect things, which gives us a tremendous way of sort of approaching the urban setting. In addition, it's going to be a challenge to build. It has floating towers everywhere. It has different levels of strata, so how we sort of cordon off the parts you can go to, and when you look up what happens, and if you jump off something what happens, will be an interesting build environment.
Yeah, big city, but this is going to be bigger. Eventually it's going to be bigger than Stormreach.
It also has
quite an opportunity.
Yeah, it also has the cogs. One of the gameplay things that we kind of like and want to explore more is the Halloween update. When Halloween turns on, you sort of wander around and try to find entrances into these little mini dungeons, and you're constantly doing smaller dungeons in order to gain resources. And the dungeons are fun because it's a 5-minute investment, a 10-minute investment, not a 40-minute investment. So you can run around and constantly do dungeons. We'd like the same thing to happen in the cogs. So we want the cogs to be, you're running around adventuring, gathering things in the main cogs, but there's always a chance that keys or doors or however you get into these small mini adventures in the cogs can drop, and a lot of stuff happens in the cogs, and it's not only just wandering weird creatures. There's also people that do dirty deals down there, and you might wander into a merchant trying to, launder money through something that they shouldn't, and now they have to kill you. And there are a lot of opportunities for smaller stuff down there if you don't want to kind of do a 45-minute dungeon experience in the upper city while you're combating whatever noble is trying to profit at the expense of the common folk, or maybe you're the one profiting.
Like all good D&D cities, it's built on a dungeon.
Yeah.
Yeah. Can you elaborate a little bit what you mean by a cog? Because that's not something I think a lot of people are maybe familiar with for DDO.
Oh, so the city is 4 levels, and the topmost floating towers and the uppermost is the upper echelon of the rich of the rich. And then you have a sort of middle class and all of the middle towers and street level. And then you have sort of all the way down, and in the highest areas, the lowest areas are really poor because that's where everything gets dropped, including kind of like the down and out people. But underneath the city, there's a whole underground thing of the cogs, which started out as all the mechanisms that keep the city moving. So like literal cogs that sort of move,
and there's molten lava down there, and it's kind of a steampunk industry section of the city.
It's like a sort of industrial, the fantasy equivalent of industrial wasteland, but if it was underground, had Warforged, and then had a whole bunch of magical portals that summon random creatures dropped into it. So when you go sort of underground into the cogs, the adventuring is going to be sort of unique because you're outside the normal civility or incivility of the city above.
Yep. Yeah, there's a whole book on Sharn from back in the 3.5th edition days of D&D. There's just a lot of material to cover. It's a, the premium city of that campaign world. So we're only going to be covering some of it in the first expansion. It's a lot of material to cover.
So this is somewhere maybe like Evening Star, where we'll kind of expand into it, and then it'll keep building off of it.
Yeah, I think it's going to be. Well, we'll see, but I hope it's going to be bigger than Evening Star as first offering. But it's going to be, it's got the possibility to branch into like a major hub, like the marketplace in Stormreach is kind of full of quest givers. We need new places to. We need a new hub. We need many new hubs.
Sure. Yeah. So, what else can you tell us about? Maybe give some highlights of what else players can expect short term. Coming soon.
We talked about that at Gen Con, so it'll be a new race. We're looking at the Wood Elf, which would be a elf variant that will be shorter term. We'll be having the spectral dragon will return for Halloween, along with maybe some new surprises and updated loot. During that time, we'll introduce a new raid.
Yep.
Which will be also dragon themed.
Yes.
So that stay tuned to look at that. So Halloween should be pretty exciting in terms of that. Maybe other surprises.
Yep.
that we don't want to go into until I'm sure on the tech, but like Halloween may surprise the players more than they expect. And then Sharn, I think, will have good loot and systematic stuff and tiefling and a whole bunch of stuff there. Maybe some more expansion of the sentient system. I wouldn't be surprised to see more sets, sentient sets that the players can earn to change up their weapon. Maybe another slot. We'll see whether they need another, because White Plume provided another sentient slot. So if players are ready for a sentient slot, we probably do one more there as well. So that's what we're looking for, and then we've been talking sort of about what we're doing next year as well.
Well, thanks a bunch, guys, for taking some time and just kind of letting us in under the hood and sharing a little bit about what you're doing and why and all that fun stuff.
Great. Thank you.